Hi, welcome to part 4 of What's in the Box Mystery Quilt 2019. In fact, we've split into teams and congratulations, you are in Team B. This is an awesome team to be in. So by now you'll have your notes. So we've got some notes, we've got some labels, same sort of thing as we normally do. And I've gone ahead and I've cut all my fabrics according to the cutting list here. I've got labels on everything. Most of these labels are temporary, some of them will be permanent. But it's just to help us get going so that we know what it is that we're doing and what it is that we're using in the way of evidence, so that we can bring this evidence together with that evidence, and so it goes on. Evidence is a tricky thing, and some evidences lead to all sorts of other evidences. However, Team B we are, and so let's get started. So as you can see, I've done all my cutting, I've done my labelling according to all of this, because I think that this is such a good idea, because it helps me know where I'm at, and hopefully it will help you with your evidence gathering as well. So to get started on our notes, you'll see that we've got some things to do down here. So we've got to combine some pieces. Now there's different colours to combine, but the technique is kind of similar for the different colourways. So I just thought I'd go through one lot with you just to show you how that's all done. Initially we're making some little units, for those of you who know what flying geese are, they're little flying geese units. So I've gone ahead and I've marked, as it tells me in the notes, some of the squares with a little diagonal line. So I need 2 of those to go on there, and then 2 of the background. Now I'm using the dark background for the sample this time. So I've marked with my light pencil. So this would be normally a background colour here, and well, it is a background colour, but it's the dark one this time, and these are background fabric as well. So if you've been used to watching me use the light colour, this time we're using the dark for the background. So I'm going to go ahead, I've marked a diagonal line on here, and I've got to stitch that onto the background rectangle there, and I've got to do the same thing here onto that colour. So the notes are telling us that. So I'll go ahead and do that. So these can be chain pieced through. You could get all your colours ready ahead of time, and then you could just chain piece them through just as a way of simplifying the process. So when we've done this line of stitching, then we have to trim those off and press them. So I'll go ahead and do my trimming and pressing. So I've gone ahead and I've stitched my corner, trimmed it off, and I've pressed the colour out into the triangle. And now I'm going to pop the other pieces on. I've done that on both pieces. Now I'm going to pop this piece on top here. So this time I want to stitch it in the opposite direction. So I've got my diagonal line going from there to there. But again, I prefer to start on the flat edge rather than at a point. So I'm going to turn it round and do that, and I'll get the other one ready so that I can chain piece those through as well. So I've gone ahead, I've trimmed my other seams, pressed them, and now looking at the notes here, we need to have done, so this is what I've been doing here. So I've got these bits ready, and then we're going on to the next page of our notes. And in this diagram here, this little bit just here is what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to be putting, I could turn it around, that might make it easier for you. So looking at this piece here, I'm going to be putting this piece, joining it to this piece to be able to create this little bit here on the notes here, or in the other colourway, of course, this piece here. So I'm just making one colourway just to show you at the moment. So I'll go ahead and get that joined up, and then we'll look at the next bit. So I've gone ahead and I've joined up my little stack here. The notes also asked us to join up some little squares and rectangles in a couple of different colourways. So I've joined the one appropriate for this little stack here. And now I need to pop those either side. It makes a funny little shape there, so that we end up with this shape here. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you how to go about trimming that all up. So I've gone ahead, I've joined up my slightly unusual shape so that it looks a bit like the one in the pattern notes here. And I'm just going to show you how to do the trimming up so that we get that nice and the shape and size we want it. So the pattern asks us to measure and find the halfway point in the top of that piece there. You can do that by folding a press in it. You can mark it, you can set it so that it's on your board, and if you want to use the markings it should be an even amount in from each of those two lines there, and you can mark that center one, but you do need a mark that you can see. And so then we need to trim these little edges off to nice straight edges. This is going to be a triangle. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut through that point, but down here we want, on most rulers there's a 1/4 inch marker line, 1/4 inch in from the edge, so we want that 1/4 inch line to sit right over that corner there, but we want the actual edge of the ruler to go right through that point there. So I'm just going to position that on so that the very edge goes through that point there, but the 1/4 inch in line goes right through the point of that triangle, that corner there. So edge on the point there, 1/4 inch on the point down there. So what you should find is that's lining up pretty well to trim off where the fabric intersects on those little corners there. So we just want to trim those little corners off there. And then we want to do the same thing down this other side. So it's a little bit easier now because we know what we're doing. So we want the actual corner, that marker there to go right on the edge of the ruler this time, and the 1/4 inch in line to go on the point of the little corner up there. So edge on the point here, 1/4 inch in on the point down there. Again, it should line up fairly well to trim off those little corners at the intersections there. And so that then you should end up with a nice shape like this. You've got some little blunt corners on the ends here, and that's exactly how we want them. We would like this edge to measure, it should measure at 9.5 inches. So if I put that on the 20, and that's on the 29.5. So it's looking pretty good. So if you can get your triangles to look like that and to measure like that, that will be awesome. I've gone ahead actually and done my hair so I can show them to you, and I've labelled them. So these are the 4A ones. This is the one I've just done. And then the other colourway, so there's 2 of those, and then there's 2 of these 4Bs in the other colourway. So if you can go ahead and get those done, that would be fantastic. As such clever little investigators that you are, no doubt you will be pretty much already there, but don't go away, there's still more to do. Team B is doing well. Thank you. Hi, so we've still got some more things to make here. We've got to make some other triangles with our H and J pieces. We've got some H squares and some J squares, and we want to, on the back of 4 of them, these ones here, we want to mark a diagonal line like we've done before, but this time instead of stitching, and we're going to place it together with one of the other squares, instead of stitching on the line like we've done before, this time we're going to stitch 1/4 inch either side of the line. I'm not sure if you can see that. I've already done my stitching, so I've cut my squares, on 4 of them I've marked it, and I'm stitching either side of the line so that this time we can cut on that line. So I'm just going to cut that now. And then we're going to press that and we can press it towards the darker colour, and we can do both of them while we're here. So now that we've done that, we need to just make sure that that's the right size. So it'll be very slightly too large. If you have a small square, I would suggest you use it for this. Perhaps you have a larger square, that works just as well. So perhaps I'll show you with a larger square. We just want to trim it to measure 3 inches square. So on my ruler here, I've got a 3-inch box so that the numbers go out. So we just want it to be 3 inches. So there's a diagonal line on most square rulers that will come through there, and I want to set that on there so that I can get the diagonals straight through, and there'd be very little to trim off, just a little whisker here and there, but it makes all the difference if you trim off that little tiny whisker. of fabric to make it nice and square. Again, turn it round then. Position the ruler again so that the 3-inch lines on the edge there, the diagonal lines going up the middle, and again just that whisker of fabric. It's very little that's got to come off there, but what it leaves us with is a very nice square. So we want to do that to all the squares that we've just made, and then we also now want to go ahead and pop some triangles on. So we've still got some squares that we haven't used. So what we want to do with those now is we want to cut those in half diagonally, because we want to use them as triangles rather than as squares. So some are used as squares and then stitched and cut, and some are just used as triangles. So this is what we're trying to make. So we've just made a little square here, and what we want to do now is make sure that we've got everything sitting in the right position so that we can put the right triangle on the right piece. And your diagrams in your pattern, your notes will show you all this, of course. So we want this diagonal going out there, and on this lighter side here you're going to put the darker colour, and on this darker side here basically you're making a large triangle, and we're going to stitch that on there. So you just want to go ahead and stitch that on there, and we're going to press it to one side and stitch that on there. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you where we're at the end of that. So I've stitched my 2 triangles on, and I've pressed the seams towards each of the triangles. So on the back you can see that the square has got the seams going out from it. So I just would like to just make sure that you're aware that these edges of our triangles here are on the bias, so that means they're a little bit stretchy. So when you press this, just be a little bit aware and not stretch that long diagonal edge there. Make sure these lines are staying nice and straight, and press them in nicely like that, so that you don't get a stretched out shape. That would not be helpful at this stage. So we've done all that, and now there's just one last little thing to do. We just want to trim up that little edge there, just to make sure that it's sitting nice and smoothly. So if we line this up nicely with our board, you can see that the lines need to be nice and straight here and here. And we just want to trim up that diagonal so that it's sitting just absolutely right. So on your ruler you've most likely got some lines going across. Line one of those up with the diagonal join in your block there, so that it goes out through the point, and line up so that you've got a nice 1/4 inch from where this join is here to the edge. You're just going to trim off. It'll only be, again, like a little whisker trim, just to straighten that edge up nicely, and just trim that off so that that join in there is a 1/4 inch from that edge. And if you've managed to get all that done, you've done really well. Then we're going to label these. These are the 4C. I've gone ahead and got all mine done. So we needed a few of those. I think there's 8 of those. If you're doing a different colorway, just to give you an idea, this is another colorway here. So these fabrics are a little bit similar, but we've got a lighter and a darker one here and here. And so I've done both my colorways. They're looking pretty good. So that's it for part 4. Thank you very much. Splitting off into teams that we've done. We're all going to get back together in the next part. But it's been a lot of fun having you along as investigators so far. Keep up the good work, and we'll see you for part 5. Thank you.